When you think about it, society supports and encourages academia. So at school, when I was at school, you had your A 1, 2, 3 class, B 1, 2, 3, 4. I was put in B4 because my academia wasn't good. So instantly I was labelled thick because you were in the thick groups. And I'm using that term because that's what was said. And now if you called somebody thick, it'd be like, what? But actually, I'm massively intelligent and I'm really creative. And my intelligence goes way beyond any type of academia. My mind does not work academically.
Hi everyone, you're not going to want to miss this incredible episode of the Final Cut we've just had with the one and only Adam Reid. Adam has joined us, he has opened up, he has been supremely candid, he's shown true vulnerability. Adam Reid was a superstar. Cannot wait for you to watch this one. Keep it here at the Final Cut.
When you think about it, society supports and encourages academia. So at school, when I was at school, you had your A 1, 2, 3 class, B 1, 2, 3, 4. I was put in B4 because my academia wasn't good. So instantly I was labelled thick because you were in the thick groups. And I'm using that term because that's what was said. And now if you called somebody thick, it'd be like, what? But actually, I'm massively intelligent and I'm really creative. And my intelligence goes way beyond any type of academia. My mind does not work academically.
Hi everyone, you're not going to want to miss this incredible episode of the Final Cut we've just had with the one and only Adam Reid. Adam has joined us, he has opened up, he has been supremely candid, he's shown true vulnerability. Adam Reid was a superstar. Cannot wait for you to watch this one. Keep it here at the Final Cut.
Welcome back to Final Cut, Season 2. We've got a fantastic guest to start off on this fantastic day today. We've got one of the biggest names in British hairdressing, but sometimes I felt is a little bit like a bit of an enigma. We never see much of him. And today on Final Cut, we're going to get a little bit more of an in-depth view of the life of Adam Reid. Adam, welcome to Final Cut.
Thank you very much.
Exciting to have you here.
It's really good to be here.
I've known you for years, mate.
Years.
But I've seen you at functions, seen you at events, seen your work, always being like, wow, he's amazing. But never really got to chat with you like we're going to chat today.
Yeah. I'm socially uncomfortable, so...
Oh,
going
it's going to be good then.
Well, this
Hold on.
Here we go. Good luck.
That makes two of us. Well, you're not supposed to tell us that before.
Well, this for me isn't social, so being out in a social environment, I struggle massively with. So that's where the difference is. This is, for me, I'm probably more comfortable.
Yeah.
Small group,
Yeah.
a bit more of an intimate chat.
Yeah, and I think that's what we try and do on the cut is
Yeah.
to try to do it. But what we're going to try and do today is talk a lot about London.
Yeah.
Because London, for hairdressers, they come down to watch the fellowship stuff. They come to exhibitions and shows, but everything seems to happen. As a young lad coming in from Yorkshire years ago, watching the fellowship stuff and things like that, you're always like, how do you break into London and how do you say it? But for 28 years, nearly 30 years, you've been in London, starting at Charles Worthington, working through now Archive, which we're going to talk a little bit about, all the work that you do there. But my first question is to you, how have you done it for like that long in London, in this pressure cooker of hairdressing?
Do you know, it's loving it so much. I love it. I love my job. I love my career. I think the way my mind works as well is there are no limitations in my mind. So that's kept me going. I came from Somerset, so I was born in East London, born in Hackney, moved down to Somerset as a boy, did my training down there, but was always wanting to come up to London. And I used to come up in school holidays and what have you. Obviously, fashion is a big part of what I do and what I love. And any major city, it's interesting because actually I think what the fellowship and more people are doing now is taking things out regionally because the world has got bigger. But cities, obviously, they're meccas and people are drawn to those sort of places. And London for me is the biggest melting pot. And I think, fashion, when you look at London and you look at the other major cities, London is more raw and experimental and it's about collaboration. And that was my driving force.
So how did it start then? What happened?
So I've always loved fashion. I down in Somerset loved the clothes show. I used to buy the magazines every month. I would come up to London with my school friends from 13. We used to get a bus up. And I'd go to Covent Garden, Red or Dead. I would buy beauty products. I'm a massive product junkie across the board. I love product. Perfume is a big thing for me. Skincare, makeup, hair. But hair was my thing. And I remember actually 92, 93, I came up with my mum, and I remember Nicky Clark had just launched hair aromatherapy. I don't know if, it was amazing. It was in aluminium cans.
He'll remember because he's old.
Yeah. But it was amazing. And I remember going to Boots and buying every single product. I'd go in the body shop and buy all of these, every single thing in the body shop. I thought what Anita Roddick did, who became a very good friend of mine, was incredible. And I went to work in a salon in Wales for a little bit, and I won a trip on a big Redken symposium in Orlando and met some hairdressers there, Guy, Charles Worthington, Alan Peters. I met a whole load of others, and I didn't really understand networking at that point, but I'd already started it. I just thought I'll go and speak to them and chat to them. Then I was like, okay, I want to go and work in London now. So 1995, February, it was on my birthday, my 22nd birthday, I started at Charles Worthington. Now, the reason I chose Charles Worthington, I applied at quite a few places. I don't know if you remember Terence Renato or something in Kings Road. I applied there. I applied in Scissors on the Kings Road, Trevor. But Charles and Alan, for me, were just climbing that sort of steep journey onto sort of superstardom. And what I loved about them is they had a vision for the consumer as well as the industry.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that they didn't at that point have major stars, whereas Trevor did. Anthony, who was a huge inspiration to me, did. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not a businessman at all, really. My mind doesn't work like that. But I can plan. And I saw that that was a great opportunity for me. I met Carolyn Newman on the first day that I was there, Sam Shepherd-Gardner. I loved working for them from day one, really. I loved the camaraderie, the teamwork. I loved the vision of the brand and knew that I could grow with it. And I think
location were you in?
I was in Great Queen Street.
Okay.
So I started in Covent Garden in 95. 96, I went to head the Dorchester.
Okay.
And there I sort of got to meet celebrities and understand the creative. So I was really lucky. My partner at the time worked for a fashion designer called he wasn't a fashion designer, actually. He was a couture corsetier called Mr. Pearl. And through him, there was a Thierry Mugler gown and they needed some hair cutting on it. I used to go and bead corsets with him in the evening. So for extra money, we didn't earn that much money. I used to go
a bead in the old
bead. I was hand beading, and we used to do it 24 hours a day. So there were about 20 people that would go in and out, and we'd work through. And I worked in a bar in Soho for a little bit, but I met Isabella Blow, and we got on really well. So I cut this hair that was used on a Mugler couture gown. And whilst I was sat on the floor cutting this hair, Izzy came in, and I was sort of blown away by her. And I would say she was one of the massive catalysts for my career, because what she did was put me in front of these incredible people. She was a sort of a Pied Piper of creatives, and she'd get you all working together. And for me, I met Lee McQueen, Tristan Webber, Philip Tracy, Johnny Rocket, all of these amazing people. And again, for me, what that did was give me an incredible address book.
Yeah.
Charles Worthington realised the importance of fashion. So at that point, there were session stylists and salon stylists. Never the two should meet. But he started sponsoring shows. So interestingly, one of the first shows that I ever did was Red or Dead, which for me was a game changer. So I'm a massive believer in manifestation. And I realise I did it without ever knowing about it. And I know we're going to talk a lot about how realization comes into practice, but I didn't have a clue that was a thing. I've only learned about that over late sort of last 10 years, and I'm like, gosh, I got to do all of these things because I was thinking, I was doing it.
All the seeds.
So one year, Anita Roddick sponsored the Red or Dead show alongside Charles, and her and I became massive friends. And I was like, God, I used to come up to London, go to Neal Street, which was the, Kings Road, Neal Street, with the meccas of cool. And I would go into the body shop, I'd go to Red or Dead, save all my money. So even as a young boy, I started hairdressing at 13 for Saturday, holidays, all of that. I was a children's face painter on Butlins in Minehead, and I washed dishes in a hotel and worked in a coffee shop. So work for me was always in my blood, and I knew that I needed to work. I'm not driven by money. I'm driven by what comes from working really hard, which is bad in some senses because, and it has proven bad, but I will talk about that a bit.
Can I go back? You mentioned about manifestation.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's been a buzzword in the last 5 to 10 years. It didn't exist
Yes.
back when you said you were 13. And I think that's an excellent point, that you didn't realise that you did it.
Yes, I did.
But what I'm really interested by is you mentioned all these different outputs. You mentioned about fashion, the impact on your life with that. You mentioned about skincare products, just hair and beauty in general, and like Simon's question about London as well, and taking inspiration, drawing inspiration from what's around you. How did you know that it was hairdressing for you? How did you know?
It was never not.
But when was the point when it was?
So when I was a really young boy, my nan, she played a huge, I talk about her a lot. One of the fragrances in Archive Head Care is called No One Else. So I'm launching fragrance later this year. Fragrance is a
Little plug there.
huge thing for me. I'm launching in Australia actually to begin with, but it will come to the UK. It's called No One Else after my grandmother. And she used to go to a salon every week. And from as young as I can remember, I would go with her, and it was Jenny's Cut and Shape in Minehead, and Jenny had 3 salons around the West Country area, and I just loved the community element of the salon. So I'd go in with my nan and I'd make cups of tea and I'd sweep up and I'd clean rollers, and it was that smell of Elnet, and I just loved it. And I talked to the women in there, like the old ladies that were sat there, and it was a proper champagne set salon. But again, for me, I loved the structure and the routine and the community of a salon. So it was never not hairdressing. I said from day one. Yeah.
Do you know what, though, as well? Do you find, I don't find this anymore, but when we first started hairdressing or barbering, when you used to walk into a shop, there was a smell to it.
Yes.
That's gone.
Sometimes it's gone. I think when I'm getting ready for Fashion Week, you could definitely walk past my salon and there'd be a mist of Elnet wafting out. And it is always Elnet. I love it. And again, do you know, from that emotional perspective, if I smell Elnet now, I'm taken right back to a very happy place.
Yeah, definitely.
Like food.
Like food, it
Yeah,
is.
takes
Yeah,
you to
for me, it really is. And it's amazing that still has that incredible positive connotation of it takes me to a very safe and happy place.
Positive trigger.
Yeah,
isn't
yes,
it?
Yeah,
it is.
You've just said it though. Food and it fetches you back to your childhood.
Yes.
Something that you used to have when you were a kid.
Comfortable.
Right.
The security, isn't it?
Should we have some Angel Delight tonight?
I had it on, do you know what?
Delight.
I did it for my son on Friday night. I did a butterscotch Angel Delight.
Oh,
bananas.
Of all the choices,
I was going to say,
I wouldn't normally,
Butterscotch?
but do you know, because with bananas, it's really nice you got to get used to how my brain shoots off.
There's no judgment
Not
here.
sponsored by Angel Delight, by the way. We just
What we couldn't start with a Vesta curry.
yeah.
Really,
Just going back to a few points that you made there, and just as a Yorkshireman coming up, the Mugler range, but in Barnsley, where we're from, and Rob Eaton, who we got later in the season coming on, we used to say Terry Mugler.
Oh, Thierry.
Well, Terry, that's the Barnsley thing. And I remember once I was giving out an award, and Wayne Hemingway, Red Dead, was the host. And whilst the other people were presenting, he stood outside of me and said, "Are you ready to present it?" I said, "Yes." And have you watched that TV program like Fat Lookalike? I says, "I'm like your Fat Lookalike." When he went on then to present this next award, we have Wall's artistic director. He just said to me, he's a fat lookalike. Please welcome Simon Shaw. And I went, "No, I didn't." And afterwards, you were like, "Why did you do that?"
Brilliant.
By the way, is anybody keeping count? Is anybody keeping count? Twice the Yorkshire mention. We had it in the first 30 seconds.
Oh, mate, you've got to.
There's a season count.
We're doing some like linguaphone things that
Actually
week.
a fee for saying it.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Do you know, though, going back to Thierry Mugler, really interestingly, I again, the networking thing, I met everybody from there. I met Thierry, I met all of these amazing people. I then, in about 299 maybe, did my first ever colour trophy show, and I borrowed Mugler Couture, and I borrowed the dress that was made for Angel, and again, there's a really amazing story around that whole thing, but we borrowed all of this corsetry. Last night at the Oscars, not Charlize Theron, who played Barbie?
Maggie Roberts.
Margot Robbie. Margot, whatever her name is.
Robbie.
Wore the same corset that I borrowed that was used back in the 90s. And I was coming in this morning having a look to see what the outfits were last night for the Oscars, and she had that on at the Vanity Fair party. And again, for me, when I looked at it, I was like, gosh, I was there when that was made. My first boyfriend beaded it. I then borrowed it for a colour trophy show, and then it's come back out, and it just shows the relevance of what we did back then. There wasn't the disposability. There wasn't social media and what have you. There was these amazing, well thought out pieces, but that's what a lot of my heritage.
It just shows you as well what you've just said there for all our younger stylists and younger hairdressers out there, is that first thing you did this morning were looking at what were on the catwalk last night from the Oscars. And we were always told to do these when we were younger, is you need to put so much work into before you get into it.
You have to know,
research your stuff, what's happening like that. How many people watched that last night to say that
Totally.
These are the outfits?
You absolutely have to. But also
your clients today.
And understanding the relevance of things. So from my perspective, I really believe that the fact that my mind is so in tune with historical referencing.
Yeah.
It's what I'm sort of more, I would say it's what I do. And I know when I'm working, when I've worked with some of the guys that I've mentored, Kai, Eleonora, all of these people, when we're talking or when they're coming backstage at shows with me, you have to be able to keep up with a fashion reference. So a stylist will be talking to you and they'll say something and you have to recreate the hair that they ask. So there, I remember doing a whole show based on Talitha Getty, and they were stood there going, well, we don't have a clue who she is. And I was like, but it's so important that you have those references. Yeah. And for me, it's still so important because what it gives you is authority.
Which is
So
solid
this
foundation.
Solid foundations.
To build on.
I say it all the time. If you have a dodgy foundation, you cannot build on it.
No, you need it built on bricks, not sand.
Absolutely.
You know, like looking at that as well. So when you were coming through at Charles Worthington,
Yep.
you said just start to. So in the early 90s, Charles was one of the big names as we were growing up, watching Charles. And
Yeah.
he were on TV.
Absolutely.
And launched his products in books
Yes.
and that.
Yeah.
As a start, did that inspire you? Were there any enviousness?
No, no
Did you want to be him? Or
It was inspiration. I was 22, so I knew that I could learn. I knew that for me it was observing. So I was made creative director quite quickly. And again, I think I was given that role because of my dedication, because of my passion, because of my drive and ambition. We will talk a little bit about mental health later, but my mental health has always been hugely compromised, but we didn't know then. But I think what that did was gave me this incredible drive without knowing it. Honestly, I love what I said earlier. You know, I'm driven by creativity and innovation and passion. And what Charles and Alan did was, I believe they had their foot firmly in the industry, and they had their foot firmly in the consumer beauty industry, which not many people had achieved. They were really ahead of their time, and it came down to marketing and communication, PR. And for me, I think that's what I saw first. And I knew that eventually I wanted to create my own brand. Eventually, you know, I don't strive to be in the spotlight.
you did a lot of like fashion week.
So I did the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So I did Fashion Week. I would do the Oscars, the Globes, the Brits, the BAFTAs. I would do the magazine shoot, so the editorial, but it was consumer and fashion. I would work with young designers. I would educate for L'Oreal Professional. So I've been L'Oreal pretty much my whole career. I would creatively inspire the team. I would work in the salon doing clients. I sort of did everything. For me as well, I wanted to be a jack of all trades, a master of all trades. I was very much dedicated to honing the skill that I was learning to be the best at that.
We were saying though, because I don't think so many people, because you've done so many things behind the scenes, and big things, and there's, when you're talking about your diary, your black book is full of big hitters. But because then we were just talking in the green room earlier, saying, you know, we want you to do an evening for the fellowship, an evening with Adam Reed, because there's so many people don't know. And we were saying about a certain age is that you kind of like, it's the new kids coming through, and sometimes it's just nice to fetch the Rolls Royces back in to do things.
I think it's interesting because it's changed beyond recognition, really. When I was, back in the day, and I was chatting about this the other day, it was called pavement pounding, and you literally would go around and work for free. You would collaborate, and collaboration was key, but collaboration isn't necessarily working for free because you're all adding your value and you're all getting back. My book at one point was ridiculous. My thing is I don't particularly like being judged because my mind's quite fragile. Mm-hmm. So putting myself out wasn't a thing I wanted to do. I wasn't a competition enterer. I would only accept an award if I was nominated. I wouldn't put myself up for an award.
Yeah.
Controversially, I'm not a massive believer in awards because I don't believe they're awards if you have to put your own work in. I only believe they're an award if you have to be nominated.
Yeah.
Because what
somebody
you're
else
doing...
is nominating you.
Yeah, somebody else has to nominate you.
Half an award by nominating you.
Yeah, totally. But if you are entering it, for me, it's a competition.
Yeah.
And I am like, you don't enter yourself into the Oscars or the Globes. I know it's really controversial. But for me, I was told that right back at the beginning. I've accepted British when I've been nominated. I wouldn't enter because there are too many people left out and too many people of my contemporaries. If you are putting yourself up, you have no idea who you're going up against. If you're nominated, you tend to be nominated with people whose work you admire and you want your work next to it. Yeah. When you look at a fashion awards, whatever, it's only nominations. So for me, I wouldn't enter a competition because I want to know who's looking at my work. What I was told once by a really, really amazing journalist in the fashion industry, if you wouldn't go and ask that person for advice, do not put your work in front of them for them to judge you. And I was like, oh yeah, that's so true. You have to know who is looking at your work. You have to know they understand it. You have to know they respect you. Absolutely. And if they're not, then do not go down that route. And I'm a massive believer in that. For me, it's the fragility of my mind, because I'm then at the end of it. You know, when you don't win it, it can push you over the edge. So I'm like, I'm going to win with people saying they love that cut that I've done, or they remember when I did a Matthew Williamson show in 2003, and that look became a massive trend. Or, you know, when I used to get celebrities ready for junkets and what have you. For me, the winning bit is people admiring me and admiring my work, whether that is within our industry or outside. Most of where I make my money comes outside of the industry.
Right.
And I have to look at that as well.
That's interesting.
But for me, it comes down to the fragility of my mind.
So can we ask you some personal questions?
You most certainly can, because otherwise I'll just keep talking and talking and talking.
You're all enjoying it.
Load of shit you don't want to hear. I'm 51.
51. So I'm a little bit older than you. I look good, don't I?
Well, we'll be the judge of that.
Over on this time, you'll judge that.
Judging something. Let's just be careful. But you know what?
I'm not judging.
You know what? We speak a lot, and you know, if we're on phone 3 or 4 times a day, we're quite not controlling, but we kind of want things doing right. And David, from the media side of it, with his mags, we're all very similar, very driven, want things perfect and right. But in our era, as we grew up, and you just mentioned mental health then, so back in the day, we probably all suffered from it a little bit.
Yes, yeah.
But it was like, pull your socks up, get on with it.
Totally.
And we used to treat staff, though, the same. So now at 54, he's like, I struggle sometimes with people say, I'm not having a brilliant good day. I need to understand more. And so you become more patient.
Yeah.
And you understand that there's barriers and boundaries now that you know that person's going to say. But
yes,
you've done both then. So you didn't realise back in the day that you had.
Well, do you know, interestingly, I suffered from depression from a really young age. So I knew I suffered at school. I was...
And how did that manifest itself?
Well, I was bullied very bad. So I was bullied from 8 years old. I grew up in Somerset in the 80s.
Yeah.
I was gay. I didn't have a clue. You had no... And again, a lot of this will all funnel down to how I became me, and they really merge, and it's quite muddy. But not being gay in the 80s, you didn't have any reference, really, other than quite camp people on TV. But you had no area to go and get information. So I was bullied for being gay, didn't know I was gay. I suffered from ill mental health. My grandfather committed suicide when I was 13, and I took a massive hit from that. I really struggled with that. So I did have help, but it was seen, and again, you'll hear me talk quite a lot, and probably one of the reasons that I stay away is my mind works massively different. Society doesn't like the underdog because we're a threat. So creativity, honesty, if we go against structure, the people that lead that structure are, I believe, threatened by the creative mind because we're not scared to speak here. And I think that's absolutely evident now. So at school, I was thick. I was told I was thick because, so I'm ADHD. I suffer from...
Explains that academically.
Well, academic.
But creatively.
So creatively I was. But when you think about it, society supports and encourages academia. So at school, when I was at school, you had your A 1, 2, 3 class, B 1, 2, 3, 4. I was put in B4 because my academia wasn't good. So instantly I was labelled thick because you were in the thick groups. And I'm using that term because that's what was said. And now if you called somebody thick, it'd be like, what? But actually I'm massively intelligent and I'm really creative. And my intelligence goes way beyond any type of academia. My mind does not work academically. So I was continuously at the bottom of the pile, whatever. That's how society put me.
And did you get help at school?
No, not at all.
It's not like they do now.
No. There wasn't.
It existed.
There wasn't. And even in careers advice, I remember going to the careers advisor and I was told...
You would have been offered catering.
Well, I was offered window dressing, working in a shop or hairdressing. But I also worked as a hairdresser from 13, religiously. I had the most incredible work ethic. I think it's quite an unhealthy work ethic now, and I wish that I'd had an ability to manage that. But again, I believe a school should have educated me there. They couldn't, because they didn't talk about it. So I was being bullied. At school, I was told I was thick. Society put down anything that I did. You dressed differently, so you had the piss taken out of you by the parents, by teachers. I left school, went straight into work, and I remember I used to get paid £8 a day. I was allowed to get my hair done. So I'd get my hair done. I'd go and buy clothes in River Island that I wouldn't wear a school uniform. And which again, now I look at my rebellious thing, the creativity for me was my armor. I then got told off, because I wasn't dressing like I would if I went to work. I knew that my work, I knew I was allowed to dress because I was working. And I would actually try to debate that point.
Right.
But it was never listened to. So my areas where I wanted to debate, I used to say argue, I now realize it is debate, was continuously dulled. So they dull your shine whilst suffering from ill mental health. Then ill mental health was seen, and I know we talk about mental health now, it still is nowhere near where it should be looked after. You were mental, so you were, I always call it the circus freak. We were the people that stood out in society. You were pushed, you were the person that was the freak on the street, the one who dressed differently. You anti-establishment, but I wasn't anti-establishment. I was totally being me. And in a way, that was my drive to come to London, your vibe, your tribe.
Did you find hairdressing then was your safe place?
It was a safe place, but it was still really hard because what that did in society was I was always the puff. So even when I walked from my salon, which was called something else after the Sex Pistols song, they were cool and they gave me security. I still had to walk from something else a mile down to Butlins, and people would say stuff continuously and they'd take the piss out of me and they wouldn't even take the piss out of me, they'd bully me.
Adam, what year was that?
That was 1989.
1989.
So you knew in London things were going on because my pocket money was spent on magazines, and The Face, Sky, Elle was a huge inspiration to me, Vogue, and then some more ad hoc things that I'd find. But when we'd come up to London, I'd pick up fanzines in Vivienne Westwood or Boy London or, Flip in Covent Garden. And I'd take these fanzines home and they would become my Bibles. But hairdressing for me was a way of self-expression, but it didn't make it easier.
For young stylists or in your 20s who's watching this, to listen to what he's saying is just things how we grew up. It's like, go out and get the magazines, see what the latest fashions are.
Totally.
Go and
buy clothes in second-hand shops because that's what I could afford. But then I remember Vivienne Westwood did a collection for Freeman's magazine, Freeman's catalogue, which was a catalogue that sort of, you had to pay £2.50 for the next directory, and I couldn't afford that. But that had really cool clothes in. Jeff Banks, I think, designed for it, and Jeff Banks was on the Clothes Show that I just spoke about. Again, Karen Franklin, who was on the Clothes Show, became a very good friend of mine. Serendipity and universe shit, all of that started to come into place when I moved to London. But moving to London for me kicked my mental health off. I was so lonely in London. We had to work really hard. So, and I am not one of those hairdressers that will ever stand there and go, back in my day, we had to do this. But any creative work we did, we had to do in our own time. We had to run a full 5-day column to make the money. Anything else that we did outside was for free. So I was working really hard. I wanted the creativity. You were told that if you didn't do it, somebody else would do it. So, you did it. And we were working Fashion Week and Round Salon International Time. If we did a show for the fellowship, if we did a presentation for a brand, anything, it was all done for free. And interestingly, what that plants inside you is a massive devalue of your creativity.
100%. Yeah.
And any creative work was done for free. So all that ever did for me was accentuate the feeling of me being an outsider because I was creative. And we talk about it a lot now. Joe Mills and I are talking massively about it because you are still hugely devalued as a creative across the board in any area. I see designers struggling. I see photographers struggling, artists, musicians. You know, you look at what Ray was saying at the Brits last week. Give the artists a percentage. Why is it that creativity is continuously devalued? But it is what drives so many hairdressers.
It's the engine.
But it's also easy to do it because we are so driven by it that we will say yes. And I still do it. None of this is negative at all. No, it is the way it is.
The way it is.
But also what that did, that would mentally exhaust you. That would physically exhaust you. I was really lonely.
It would financially.
Financially. Well, that's why I had to do 3 or 4 jobs. And the loneliness was a big one for me, though. So even though I did have a community, I struggled. So I drank too much. And the reason that we spoke earlier about me coming across a bit of an enigma, I suffer from extreme social anxiety. So me getting up and talking in front of a lot of hairdressers, I love that. Because they've come to listen to what I've got to say. I think about it. I plan it. I try to make people laugh. When they laugh, I'm given a little bit of a boost, so I do a little bit more of that. You know, my hair work, sometimes it's really commercial because I know how to do that, but my creative work is every minutiae detail is made by me. And when I'm doing a show, you know, I remember Kai and I doing a colour trophy show. So it was their 60th, and I can't remember when that was. But I was like, okay, I want the soles of the boots to match the colours of their nails. And he said, why would you want that? Would anybody notice it? And I went, I'll notice that. And if you look at any show that I've done, the soles of the shoes will always be coloured or designed. The nails are designed, the detail, and most of it's made by us.
Would you say when somebody's working with you that you're hard work?
You'd have to ask them.
Yeah, but what...
Because
you just said about detail and stuff, and we're very similar.
Do you know, for me, that's not hard work.
No, but
for other people, it could be. For me, why I think
you're demanding. You're like,
I wouldn't say demanding because I think they get so involved. But honestly, I think. Do you know? Interestingly, as well, earlier you asked about me possibly doing some interviews, and the thing that came to my head was I'd love to interview people that have worked with me. So people that have assisted on shows with me, maybe once or twice, who came to the X Factor with me, and I would want it to be really honest, because for me, I'd like to think that they went away feeling motivated and inspired like I did when I worked with Charles. Now, sometimes I was exhausted and knackered, so did I enjoy it every time? No, I didn't. I'd love to know if they did.
Yeah.
And I'd love to know if they did take things from it, or did I absolutely slave drive them? Because I don't really know.
But your dedication and your passion, that's what Simon was alluding to.
Yeah.
The details, like everything about it, it's no stone left.
I think when we stuff it past as well, you can just tell by people's faces, and you can tell by the respect that you gain.
Do you know, I really hope that they would. There are sometimes, if my mind isn't in the best place, I can become a bit insular. But what I will do is I have no qualms. So I'm sober 14 years this year.
Well done.
So a lot changed then. And I would say that maybe when I drank, that people would have a very different opinion of me. Because alcohol was not good for me. So I could be an absolute twat when I was drunk. And sometimes I needed a drink to help me get through. And it's probably where I have the most shame. But I would hope that after I gave up drinking, people would realize that I only ever wanted inclusion and for them to feel a part of a process. Because ultimately as well, if I ever upset anybody, that's when I felt really sad. It would make me feel sad. But I think in those situations, things could happen where maybe I lost my shit a bit. But again, I would always try to apologize after. I have no qualms in apologizing. And, I know that a lot of what I do is wrong or has been wrong.
Yeah.
I know that I've made mistakes, but I'm not. So I've always said, I do not seek adoration. It's not anything that I've ever done. I love people respecting my work and enjoying my work and, loving what I talk about. And, but the way my mind works, if I'd have gone after that, I think I'd be dead a long time ago.
Can I come in and I say, I'm so fascinated by your backstory, and you've been so candid and vulnerable with us, which I think we all really appreciate, and I'm in no doubt the viewers will as well. But you mentioned from school and that feeling of being excluded or left behind because it wasn't the academic side of things, it was your skill set, it was the creativity, and that wasn't, you weren't given a place to grow in that sense.
Absolutely not.
And it's so nice to know that in hairdressing and hair and beauty, you found that location, you found that place. But you also mentioned about the creatives not being valued.
Yeah.
You mentioned Joe Mills. That's a hot topic right now. I think that's an excellent point to raise. But there seems to be this recurring theme that because of where you came from and the timing and the year, that there's this lack of being valued. And you said you don't want to be adored, but you want to be included.
Well, value is it's important. Number one, society sets itself up that we have to earn money. Mm-hmm. If I could go through life and not have to earn money, my mental health would not be anywhere as bad as it is, because number one, I have no understanding of managing financial stuff. I don't really understand academia.
Do you have a manager then that works?
Yes, I do now. And I'm changing a lot of stuff because society doesn't support my mind at all.
But you mentioned about the value. I'm thinking more from a kind of human capital side of things.
See, I'm very valued there. I've worked with amazing brands. They want me for my creativity, for the way that my mind works. I have been afforded the opportunity to travel the world doing what I do and hopefully inspiring people, which for me, the currency.
That's the currency.
And so from a legacy point of view, where are you with regards to your work and passing that down onto the next generation and making sure that they have the same values and understanding?
And hopefully this is right. I would say using your voice. Is that right for that question?
Yeah, it's obviously we've just done a piece with Trevor Sorby last year.
Yeah.
And obviously I've been working with him for a year or so. And his focus where he is at the point in his life is his legacy, and we've seen what he's created. And I can understand from talking to you that you have created the same. It'd be lovely to get those people.
Which is interesting. So Headcare Archive that I created, my husband and I adopted our son 7 years ago. And when going through an adoption process as a same-sex couple is not easy. Again, society doesn't lend itself well. But it was a real thing for us. Kenny's one of the most incredibly humane people. And when I met Kenny, I'd given up alcohol. I wasn't going out because of social anxiety. Didn't think I'd meet anybody. We met walking our dogs. I rescue dogs. Animals, the land has a huge part in my feeling good about myself. We decided to get married. Again, anybody that knows me, I think, was shocked when that happened. But when we adopted Riley, what we realised is our initial spur arc. So Adam, Riley and Kenny. A client of mine had bought us 3 beautiful glass jars, and we put them up and we were like, oh my gosh, that's arc. That's amazing. There's a rescuing connotation element to that. Riley came to us 5.5. So that's quite an age to adopt. Mm-hmm. Difficult to adopt boys over 3, but that was what we wanted to do. I then left Percy and Reed after 10 years, and I was setting up Adam Reed London, and I opened the salon and the pandemic hit. Now, when Riley came to us, there were whole things of touch and feel, washing his hair, brushing his hair, things that my grandmother did for me. So because I struggled even going out as a child, I didn't like going to school. I would be scared to go out in our town. She used to do things. She would spray herself with fragrance and hug me and say to me, if you're struggling or you feel down, smell your top and I'm there. So when Riley came to us, we started doing these things with him. Bathing became a big thing, going out for walks, nature, tree hugging, forest bathing, all of these things. I'm a bit of a hippie at heart. I love smoke to smell and fragrance a room. I use sage, Palo Santo, all of this stuff. I opened Adam Reed London. As you can see, my ADHD mind I'm not the easiest person.
It's fascinating.
It's quite boring for me.
But I had a nervous breakdown. So in the first lockdown, I had an episode of dissociative amnesia. So I became obsessed with watching the reports in the day because I had an exit from a business. I'd set up my own business. We hit the lockdown. I hadn't got my full team together and I couldn't cope at all. So I ended up in hospital not knowing anything, really. I knew one of my dogs and that was it. When I came out of hospital, it was better to have me out of hospital because my memory was about 3 minutes long. So they'd tell me what was up. I did post about it, and this was a big starting talk of opening up about ill mental health, especially within our industry, the beauty industry as a whole. They'd sent me home. I didn't understand the hazmats. I didn't understand face masks. I didn't understand the pandemic. I didn't know what was going on. And Riley, very interestingly, reversed the stuff that he had learned with me. So he'd brush my hair, he'd spray my pillow, he'd run me a bath. And I was like, God, this is head care. And I wasn't going to do products again, even though it's my biggest passion. I was always going to just do fragrance because I believe in the importance of smell, memory, evocation. Is that word? Evokes memories. Mm-hmm. So archive was always just going to be fragrance. Then I was like, do you know what? And I believe in the second lockdown, we as hairdressers realized that our creativity was so important for each other. Salons were huge, important spaces for community and mental health. And actually, so many people were like, God, you're like a therapist as well as a hairdresser, it all came out. And I was like, oh my God, we had this incredible opportunity. And that's where head care was born. Archive is Adam, Riley and Kenny. And then my history and my knowledge of our industry of supporting creatives, of supporting communities. I've never not worked on the shop floor because I love talking to my clients, them talking to me, laughing with my team, taking the piss out of myself, all of the stuff that I do. And I was like, fuck me, we have this incredible opportunity to turn this around. Now, I do believe that society has shat all over that. I think our government is horrific in what they did to our industry and what they're doing to our communities. But I believe that we still have this incredible opportunity to really bring mental health to the forefront. What is disappointing is there are too many people talking about it and not enough people doing stuff about it. It's harder now. So as somebody who suffers from mental health, extreme mental health, I am medicated the whole time. I suffer from psychotic dissociation. So I will disassociate quite a lot. Paranoia, extreme anxiety, depression, ADHD, addiction. People will say that they support you, but they don't. Mm. So when I need help, I lost a lot of money. Well, I lost everything in the pandemic. So I looked at going on a retreat. I was going to section myself. And then I was looking to get mental health support. The cheapest that I could find for 2 weeks was £24,000. So I went back to the NHS. There's a minimum of a 15-month waiting list. I am on the records. I am in the system and it's 15 months. It's like, come on, guys, you need to turn this around. Physical health and mental health are health.
Yeah.
You will support physical health. There is no support, and I don't care. You can read about it on social media. You can read about it. You can hear politicians talking about it. But again, diversity here is key. You look at our government and there is no diversity. You look at our industry and we are a diverse industry. This is a beauty industry as a whole. Diversity is key to making a change, and we will never make change. And this goes back to the society thing that I was talking about earlier. We follow and we have stuck by our governments. It is archaic. It is so far behind anything that we need, but mental health is our biggest killer and will be our biggest killer.
Yeah, I think it's just...
Sorry that I go political, but again, my ADHD mind
to you, though, because we're obviously a similar age, and it's like a lot of stuff is like, it just sounds a lot. I hadn't had the troubles that you've had, and you know, but some of the stuff you say, just like our upbringing and
yes,
went through it, and it is difficult, and I think there is a misunderstanding with ADHD is that I know people and they are so creative. They'll always do well in life because academically they're not doing well, but
they find a way.
They find a way.
Well, you do, and I suppose entrepreneurism, being an entrepreneur, comes quite a lot from that.
It's actually be called unemployable, is the
It is, yeah. And you think back when we were young, it was horrible, really, because actually you were told
thought,
yeah,
and you've got your own understanding,
and I'm lucky, you know,
inform that you're wrong.
The brands that I work with, they really do understand how my mind works. And, you know, I co-founded Archive Headcare with a incubator company. At the point, I didn't have anything left. And, you know, I'd spoken to my husband and said, listen, this is the point I'm in. You know, liquidating a company is seen as a really bad thing. It's not.
Happens every day, thousands of times every day.
And do you know what? I tried everything that I could. This is the first time I've spoken about this, but I had to liquidate I had to liquidate Adam Reed London. And I had support and help to reset up. But personally, I was absolutely at my lowest in every sense. And it was funny because, really interestingly, people say to me, are you embarrassed by some of the things that happened? And I'm like, of course I'm not fucking embarrassed. I'd be embarrassed if I didn't work hard to try to do it. Yeah. You know, I didn't come from a financial background.
But did that person own a business who asked you that?
No, but you get asked it quite a lot. And, you know, very interestingly, I talk very openly about my mental health because I really believe small things make a bigger difference. And what's very interesting for me, when I first talked about addiction and then I started talking about mental health, it would be the 5 or 6 messages that came through, and on social media, obviously, but I've spoken about it in every arena that I have. It would be the 5 or 6 messages that came through that somebody would say, and a lot of these people were well known, they would go, do you know what? To know that I'm not on my own here is really, really amazing. And I really thank you for doing it. For every 5 that I got messages from people, I remember I was speaking very openly about suicidal ideation. So suicidal ideation is thinking about suicide. I've never, ever wanted to kill myself, but I think about suicide a lot. And I spoke about suicidal ideation, and somebody who doesn't know me messaged me and said, just put us out of your misery and walk under a bus. I get messages like that a lot. So I get a lot of mental health hate. So it's a very interesting thing because you're then like, just because people are talking about it, it has not brought ill mental health into a more public arena. I was speaking last year about how anxiety and stress and these as words are used flippantly and chucked out. And it was interesting because I was doing a day with some young hairdressers, and every single one of them, when they were presenting to me in a panel, and every single one of them would start their presentation by saying, oh, I got really stressed about this. And I was like, was it stress or excitement? You need a differentiation here because you look at reality TV. I'm not going to name any names, but I think we all know who we're talking about, where you see a group of girls going, my anxiety has sent me over the edge. And it's like, you're not anxious, babe. You really do not suffer from anxiety. And what you're doing is taking away from me. Use the right word because excitement is as important as anxiety.
Totally.
And sometimes I misinterpret how I'm feeling. And if I take a step back and think, okay, are you excited about this because you're just about to put on a massive show and people are going to see your work? Or are you excited or anxious? If I determine what I'm feeling, I'm going to enjoy it way more. But actually, it's so flippantly chucked out. And it's like, it's so easy to use. You know, you can't see mental health issues. And there are many, 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 many. You can see if somebody's got a broken leg. You can see if somebody's physically ill. If somebody has...
It's tangible, isn't it? It's in front of you.
Somebody has an illness that we all know about, it's much easier for you to say, I have that illness, and people are way more sympathetic, but that's how society has rated
It is, yeah.
mental health. But health to me is health, and I think we have this incredible opportunity to build a much more positive community and conversation. And what's really interesting here, so what's happening in my mind at the moment is I'm now stressing myself out that I'm not talking about what you guys asked me. So this is what's really interesting about anxiety. So I'm going to self-perpetuate this now. I will go away from this today and think, fuck me, that was shit. I'll catastrophize this.
Okay, so we're quite the opposite.
But do you know what's very interesting about it is this now is already, that seed's just gone into my head, and I'm like, okay, I'm spewing out this stuff. I will go away and I know catastrophize this.
Yeah, but we're trying to figure out how we can help.
But isn't it funny that that's now already?
Yeah,
that's happening, and I'm like,
you're still doing
inspiring?
It's a conversation.
Well,
It's interesting, isn't it? And again, do you know what's really important for me to talk about is I could sit here and talk about the thousands and thousands and thousands of amazing things that have happened to me. And I was with a mentor that I'm working with at the moment a couple of weeks ago, and he said, I'm going to start this session by asking you if you like yourself. And I'm like, categorically no. I don't like myself. I don't like what goes on in my head. I don't see what I put out as being creative. I don't see it as being inspiring. So every time, and do you know what? This is the first time I've ever spoken about it in this situation. So it's really interesting. Number one, I feel comfortable with you guys to do it.
Good.
Because a lot of it is about that. But that's where my head went there. I could talk for hours about positive things that have happened to me. And I'm exceptionally proud of the things that I've been afforded.
But you haven't gone there.
I'll also now beat myself up.
Do you not think, though, that...
Isn't that funny?
This is perhaps the opportunity to bring it in.
And do you know what? It's also for other people that are listening to say, actually, if your mind works in a neurodiverse way, and I'm only learning about neurodiversity at the moment, but I never opened my husband thinks this is one of the best things that ever happened to me. So back in the 80s, I didn't open my exam results, my GCSE results. We was the last year of O-levels because I felt, and what I called it was miseducation. I felt that I had been miseducated and I wanted to prove that I could make something of my life. So I set myself up to fail, basically. But in the 80s, when none of this was talked about, I would not open my exam results because I was like, I don't want to see them because they're going to be shit. And ultimately, it's just going to say...
I took it one step further. I left at 15.
Yes. Well, do you know what I should have, really? I should have.
I was cutting the car carpet.
Doing the right thing for me was I couldn't. I'm so scared of...
the outcome.
The outcome, yeah.
Well, I'll
perceived outcome.
Yes, yes.
I will say I've done over 100 podcasts since 2020, and this has been the most honest conversation.
So raw, so organic.
With anybody. Because you said, we spoke to you earlier before we do a little bit of research and we'll speak to people for anything you want to stay away from. And I kind of like, well, we're going to say this today, we're going to say that.
Yes.
We didn't need to with you because you've come in.
And I also, I know, and again, very interestingly,
I'm glad you feel comfortable with this.
Yeah, thank you for that.
When I came in and you said about sending the message, I saw the message. I cannot ring people. So phones and me, it's a horrific thing for me.
What's the best way to communicate with you?
Face to face.
Face to face. Come and knock on your door.
It really is, and it's interesting because
now you've had an interview with us. We'll be talking all the time.
Well, do you know what? It's such a funny thing as well because I'm so prolific on social media. I think I've posted on Instagram 22,000 things. I'm hugely visual. There'll be the motivational things. There'll be funny pictures of stuff that I've done. It literally is a smorgasbord of everything, single thing that goes on up here. That's the most dangerous place in my world.
Well, a career that's spanned over 28 years here in London, working for some of the top names and having your own businesses. Adam Reid here on Final Cut has been amazing, an eye-opener. I really can't thank you enough for your honesty.
It's my pleasure.
And
Thank you
the
for
knowledge
making me
that
feel so
we always
feel
learn.
tired listening.
That's what. So Lee, whatever time it is, this is me the whole time. Exhausted.
We'll finish off with a few quick fire questions so our viewers can get a little bit of lightness off some of this stuff. So, what's your favourite song?
Ray of Light, Madonna.
Favourite film?
Inglourious Bastards, Quentin Tarantino.
Good choice.
And Titanic. I love Titanic.
Where's your favourite vacation?
Thailand. Klong Nim Beach in Koh Lanta.
Night in or night out?
Night in.
And who would you do that with?
My husband and my son and my dogs.
Excellent. Final cut. Adam Reed, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.